She lost control when you went no contact. What she's doing now will shock you. Stop. Do not speak. Do not explain yourself. Do not send the message that is sitting in your drafts. Do not justify your silence. This is not advice. This is a command. If you click this, it's not an accident. You were not scrolling randomly. You were not led here by curiosity. You were summoned here because something in the spirit required your immediate attention, and heaven does not repeat instructions twice. You went no contact, and the moment you did, control shifted. Authority shifted. Power shifted. And the person who once felt secure in having access to you felt something snap. She lost control when you chose silence, not because she stopped caring, but because silence exposed what words were covering. Silence revealed what emotions were hiding. Silence removed her ability to manage the story. And now she is doing things behind the scenes that would shock you if you could see them clearly. But you are not allowed to look. You are not allowed to check. You are not allowed to react. Because what God is building for you right now can only survive if you obey this instruction fully. Listen carefully, because this message is not for the emotionally curious. It is not for the reactive. It is not for people who need constant validation. This is for chosen ones. The ones who have always felt spiritually different. The ones who are often misunderstood, isolated, labeled as distant, cold, or hard to read. The ones who feel a strange mix of peace and pressure right now, like something big is close but fragile. The ones who have learned, painfully, that explaining yourself never saved you, but silence protected you. If that's you, your spirit already recognized this word before your mind caught up. That recognition is not comfort. It is responsibility. Here are the identifiers. Do not rush through them. Let them diagnose you. First, when you stop talking, other people become uncomfortable. They are fine when you explain, but unsettled when you don't. Second, you have noticed that people project their guilt, fear, or insecurity onto your silence. Third, every time you tried to fix things by talking more, things got worse, not better. Fourth, you feel watched right now, even though you are saying nothing. Fifth, you are being tested with urges to break silence, just to be kind, just to check, or just to clear the air. Sixth, your intuition has been louder than your emotions lately. Seventh, you know deep down that if you speak too soon, you will regret it. If even 3 of these are true, this message is for you. Click like now. That action is confirmation. Do not write a sentence in the comments. Write 1 word only. Or 1 emoji only. Obedience matters more than expression. Now you need to understand why God gave this command, because ignorance leads to disobedience. God commanded you to go no contact because exposure at this stage would sabotage the process. When Joseph shared his dreams before the time, it triggered betrayal and delay. When Samson revealed the source of his strength, he lost it. When David showed himself too early, he became a target. When Jesus knew the timing was not right, he withdrew and said nothing. Silence has always been God's method of protecting what is growing. Right now, silence is not about punishing her. It is about positioning you. If you explain yourself now, you hand over leverage. If you react now, you reopen a door God closed. If you reach out now, you reset a cycle you prayed to escape. These are not emotional consequences. These are spiritual consequences. Fear this part, because it is real. Breaking silence prematurely invites confusion. Confusion delays clarity. Clarity delays elevation. Elevation delays provision. God does not punish you, but disobedience always has a cost. And she knows something has changed. She feels the loss of access. She feels the loss of influence. She feels the loss of emotional control. That is why her behavior has shifted. She is replaying conversations. She is rereading old messages. She is watching your absence more closely than she ever watched your presence. She is testing indirect paths. She is trying to regain footing without revealing vulnerability. One moment she feels anger. The next moment curiosity. Then regret. Then fear. Not because she suddenly became evil or broken, but because silence forces people to confront what they were avoiding. But hear this clearly. You are not called to manage her emotions. You are called to steward your assignment. Now listen to what God is preparing, because obedience without vision leads to resentment. God is preparing vindication that does not require explanation. God is preparing provision that does not require chasing. God is preparing authority that cannot coexist with emotional dependency. There is a platform forming that requires discipline. There is influence coming that requires restraint. There is stability being built that cannot survive constant emotional access. You are being trained in quiet authority. Authority that does not argue. Authority that does not beg. Authority that does not explain itself. This is not the season where you are understood. This is the season where you are protected. This is phase 1. Phase 1 is silence, separation, and restraint. Phase 1 feels lonely. Phase 1 feels unfair. Phase 1 feels like you are doing nothing while everything is happening. But phase 1 is where God removes unhealthy access and tests obedience. Subscribe now, because phase 2 is coming, and you will need to be prepared. Phase 2 is revelation. Phase 2 is when truth surfaces without you saying a word. Phase 2 is when patterns become visible. Phase 2 is when intentions are exposed naturally. Phase 2 is when people begin to understand what your silence meant. And phase 3 is elevation. Phase 3 is restoration. Phase 3 is when access reverses. Phase 3 is when your name is spoken in rooms you were excluded from. Phase 3 is when stability replaces chaos, and clarity replaces confusion. But hear this final warning, and do not ignore it. Curiosity will tempt you. Loneliness will whisper to you. Compassion will try to override wisdom. Ego will suggest you need closure. None of these voices are from God in this season. Curiosity will cost you clarity. Loneliness will cost you momentum. Premature compassion will cost you authority. And ego will cost you peace. This silence is not permanent. It is appointed. Like this video again. There will be a time to speak, but that time is not now. Comment one word only that represents now is the time to hold your position. Subscribe, because the next phase will require discernment. And now, I seal this instruction. Father God, I ask that you cover this listener in discipline, clarity, and peace. Strengthen their resolve. Silence every voice that tries to pull them out of alignment. Guard what you are building in secret. Let their obedience speak louder than any explanation ever could. And I warn you one last time. Do not break silence. What is coming is worth the wait, remain still. Do not rush. Do not assume the instruction ended just because the silence feels heavy. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is movement without noise. And right now, Things are moving faster than you realize. If you are still listening, it means you resisted the urge to look back. That restraint alone separates you from most people. You need to understand something with absolute clarity. The pressure you feel to break no contact is not random. Pressure always comes right before transition. The enemy never fights what isn't about to change levels. The reason the pull feels stronger now is because the old dynamic is collapsing. Systems that once relied on your emotional availability are destabilizing. And when systems destabilize, they try to reassert control. This is why you may notice sudden memories, dreams, emotional flashes, or a sense of urgency that feels artificial. That urgency is not love. It is withdrawal. It is the reaction to losing influence. And your obedience is accelerating the collapse. Listen carefully. You were never meant to stay accessible forever. Access is a privilege, not a right. And when God removes access, it is always for a reason. You did not go no contact to punish anyone. You went no contact because your spirit could no longer survive constant exposure. God does not elevate people who leak energy. He elevates people who can contain it. That is why this season feels strict. That is why the instruction feels narrow. Narrow paths always lead somewhere wide. Broad paths lead nowhere. Right now, God is narrowing your focus, narrowing your access, narrowing your reactions, because what He is preparing for you requires precision. Here is another truth you need to hear without resistance. She is not spiraling because she loves you purely. She is spiraling because your absence disrupted her sense of certainty. Certainty is addictive. When someone knows they can reach you, influence you, provoke you, or pull a response from you, it creates psychological safety for them. Your silence removed that safety. And when safety disappears, people reveal who they really are. This is why you are seeing unexpected behavior indirectly. This is why stories are reaching you without you asking. This is why you feel watched without being contacted. Silence turns mirrors outward. But again, you are not called to interpret her behavior. You are called to interpret the instruction. Let me make this unmistakably clear. Breaking no contact right now would not bring peace. It would bring temporary relief followed by deeper confusion. Relief is not the same as alignment. God is not interested in relieving your discomfort if that relief delays your destiny. That is why obedience feels costly. That is why restraint feels heavy. That is why this message carries weight instead of excitement. Weight builds strength. Hype builds addiction. You were not chosen for hype. You were chosen for endurance. You need to hear this part slowly. The reward God is preparing is not just external. Yes, there is provision coming. Yes, there is vindication coming. Yes, there is influence coming. But the first reward is internal authority. Authority over your impulses. Authority over your emotions. Authority over your past attachments. If you cannot rule your reactions, you cannot rule anything else. This is why God often hides His chosen ones before He reveals them. Moses disappeared before he confronted Pharaoh. Elijah hid before fire fell. Jesus withdrew before His public ministry intensified. Hiding is not rejection. Hiding is training. This is still phase 1. And phase 1 lasts longer than people expect because it reshapes you, not them. Phase 1 strips you of the need to be understood. Phase 1 teaches you to let silence do the work words used to do. Phase 1 teaches you that not every emotion deserves expression. And Phase 1 ends only when obedience becomes natural, not forced. When you stop fighting the silence and start respecting it, you are close. Now let me speak directly to the fear you haven't admitted. The fear that if you stay silent too long, you'll lose her forever. That fear is revealing. Because anything you can lose by obedience was never meant to be secured by disobedience. If someone can only stay connected to you when you are accessible, reactive, and explaining yourself, that connection is not aligned with your future. God does not remove what He intends to restore properly. But He will remove what cannot survive structure. If it's meant to return, it will return differently. If it's not, it will fade without destroying you. Either way, you win by obeying. Here is where the fear-based consequence becomes serious again. If you chase clarity now, you will delay closure. If you seek answers now, you will create more questions. If you confront now, you will empower denial. Silence forces truth to surface without resistance. Words give people something to argue against. Silence leaves them alone with themselves. That is why God said nothing at times when accusations flew. Silence was not surrender. Silence was judgment in progress. Phase 2 is closer than you think. Phase 2 begins when you no longer feel the urge to check. When curiosity loses its grip. When emotional spikes flatten. When you feel grounded instead of restless. Phase 2 is revelation, but not revelation you announce. Revelation that arrives. Revelation that shows itself. Revelation that doesn't ask for your commentary. And Phase 3 comes after that. Phase 3 is visible elevation. Phase 3 is where your stability speaks for you. Phase 3 is where access is reversed. Phase 3 is where people realize too late that silence was strength. I need you to engage again, because engagement anchors obedience. Like this video if you are still committed to silence. Comment one word only. Choose carefully. That word is a vow. Subscribe now, because the next message will explain how to handle contact if it happens, and what to do if silence is challenged. You will need that instruction. And now listen to the closing covenant. Father God, I place this listener under divine restraint and protection. Strengthen their discipline. Guard their mouth. Guard their heart. Remove the urge to explain. Remove the desire to check. Replace curiosity with clarity. Replace loneliness with presence. Let their silence confuse every manipulative pattern and expose every hidden intention. Prepare them for Phase 2 without delay, but without compromise. And I warn you now, listener, with absolute authority. Do not break no contact unless God instructs you clearly. Not emotion. Not memory. Not pressure. Obedience here determines timing. Timing determines outcome. Stay silent. Stay ready. What's coming will speak for you. Do not relax yet. Silence is not passive rest. Silence is active resistance. And the moment you start feeling like you've done enough, that is when people fail this assignment. You are still in it. The quiet is still doing work. The unseen is still rearranging things in your favor. If you are feeling an unusual fatigue, a heaviness in your chest, or waves of emotion that come without warning, do not interpret that as weakness. That is withdrawal from a dynamic that fed on your attention. Any system that fed on your energy will react when supply is cut. That reaction is not your responsibility to soothe. It is your responsibility to withstand. Hear this without flinching. Some connections only survive as long as you are accessible. The moment you become unavailable, they reveal their true nature. That is why silence feels dangerous to people who relied on your reactions. They don't fear losing you. They fear losing control over how you respond. And when control disappears, desperation appears. Desperation creates noise. Noise creates mistakes. Mistakes create exposure. That is why God told you to say nothing. Silence accelerates revelation faster than confrontation ever could. You may be sensing attempts to pull you back energetically. Sudden thoughts. Old memories resurfacing. Emotional dreams. Random reminders. These are not signs you should reach out. These are signs the bond is weakening. When cords loosen, they tug. Do not misinterpret the tug as a calling. It is resistance. And resistance always spikes right before a break. If you reach out now, you reinforce the cord. If you stay silent, it dissolves. This is spiritual mechanics, not emotion. Let me speak plainly about her behavior, without romanticizing it. She is not calm. She is not at peace. She is trying to regain equilibrium. Your silence disrupted the rhythm she depended on. When someone loses emotional leverage, they cycle through strategies. First confusion. Then irritation. Then self-justification. Then subtle testing. Then monitoring. Then internal bargaining. This cycle continues until either access is restored or acceptance arrives. Acceptance is what God wants, because acceptance ends unhealthy attachment. Access restores the pattern. That is why you cannot respond. Any response resets the cycle. Silence forces it to complete. This is where chosen ones are separated from emotionally driven people. Emotionally driven people act to relieve discomfort. Chosen ones endure discomfort to protect destiny. You are being trained to tolerate emotional pressure without reacting. That is leadership training. Leaders cannot collapse every time pressure rises. Leaders hold position. That is what you are doing right now, whether you feel strong or not. I need to warn you again, because repetition seals instruction. Do not confuse empathy with obligation. You can care without contact. You can forgive without access. You can release without re-engaging. God is not asking you to harden your heart. He is asking you to harden your boundaries. Boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are structure. Structure is what holds weight. And you are about to carry more weight than you've ever carried before. There is something else happening that you cannot see yet. While you are silent, your credibility is being rebuilt in the unseen. People who doubted you are re-evaluating you. People who dismissed you are reconsidering you. People who benefited from your emotional availability are realizing what they lost. And you didn't say a word. That is how authority is established. Authority is not announced. Authority is recognized. This is still preparation for what is coming next. What God is preparing for you will require discernment. Discernment cannot exist where emotions dominate. That is why this season feels stripped. God is removing emotional noise so you can hear clearly. When the next door opens, you will need to recognize it without confusion. When the next opportunity appears, you will need to step into it without hesitation. When the next test comes, you will need to respond without panic. Silence is sharpening you. Do not underestimate the reward that follows obedience here. I am not speaking in vague promises. There is tangible change coming. Stability. Respect. Influence. Provision. A sense of internal authority that cannot be shaken by other people's moods. When God promotes, He promotes holistically. He doesn't just change your circumstances. He changes your posture. You will not chase what once consumed you. You will not beg for what once ignored you. You will not explain what once misunderstood you. That is freedom. But freedom requires one last layer of discipline. The discipline to let go of outcomes. You do not stay silent to get a reaction. You stay silent because it is right. The moment silence becomes a tactic instead of obedience, it loses power. Let God handle outcomes. Let God handle timing. Let God handle restoration or removal. Your job is alignment. Phase 2 will not announce itself loudly. Phase 2 often begins quietly. A shift in how you feel. A calm where anxiety used to live. A clarity where confusion used to dominate. A sudden lack of interest in checking. That is when you will know you passed phase 1. Phase 3 follows naturally after that. Phase 3 is visible change. Phase 3 is movement. Phase 3 is where others notice without you trying. But Phase 3 cannot arrive if you rush Phase 1. I need you to anchor this commitment again. Like this video if you are still holding silence. Comment one word only that represents restraint. Choose it carefully. Subscribe now, because the next message will deal with what to do if contact happens unexpectedly, and how to respond without breaking alignment. That instruction will matter. And now hear this final covenant spoken with authority. Father God, I ask that you fortify this listener with supernatural discipline. Let their silence be stronger than any temptation to speak. Remove every emotional hook that pulls them backward. Collapse every unhealthy attachment that feeds on their attention. Replace restlessness with peace. Replace doubt with clarity. Prepare them for the elevation that follows obedience. And I speak this warning directly to you. Do not test this instruction. Do not experiment with contact. Do not just check. Silence is your protection. Silence is your leverage. Silence is your training. Stay where you are. What is coming will make sense of everything you endured. Do not assume the quiet means nothing else is required of you. Silence is not the absence of instruction. Silence is the environment where instruction is fulfilled. Right now, you are being watched, not by curiosity, but by consequence. Every moment you remain still, something recalibrates. Every hour you resist the urge to explain, a chain weakens. Every day you do not reach out, an old authority dissolves and a new one forms. This is why the pressure feels cyclical. Waves come and go. Moments of strength followed by sudden emotion. That does not mean you are failing. That means the process is working. Detox always hurts before it heals. Withdrawal always lies before it loosens its grip. And this separation is a withdrawal from emotional dependency that once felt like love but functioned like control. You need to understand that what you are resisting is not her voice. It is the echo of an old version of yourself. The part of you that learned to soothe, to fix, to explain, to chase harmony even at the cost of self-respect. That version of you kept the peace externally while chaos grew internally. God is not interested in that version anymore. He is forming someone who can hold peace without negotiating their boundaries. Someone who can be misunderstood without panicking. Someone who can be alone without collapsing. That is who carries authority. And authority always offends people who benefited from your silence in the wrong way and your speech in the wrong moments. Right now, your stillness is exposing patterns you did not create but participated in. Patterns where your presence stabilized others while destabilizing you. Patterns where your availability became expected. Patterns where your empathy was used as access. When you remove yourself, the imbalance becomes obvious. That is why reactions feel extreme. Extreme reactions reveal extreme dependency. Healthy bonds respect boundaries. Unhealthy ones resist them. You did not imagine this shift. You triggered it by obeying. There will be moments when your mind tries to rewrite history. It will soften memories. It will magnify good moments. It will question your decision. This is not discernment. This is nostalgia mixed with fear. Fear of finality. Fear of loss. Fear of being the one who walked away. But obedience often feels like loss before it feels like gain. God never reveals the reward before the discipline is complete, because knowing the reward too early creates shortcuts. Shortcuts always compromise outcomes. So you walk by instruction, not by evidence. Let me speak to the illusion of urgency again, because this is where many break. Urgency says act now or lose everything. God's timing says wait now to gain everything. Urgency pressures. God's timing steadies. Urgency is loud. God's timing is calm. If something truly belongs to you, silence will not destroy it. If silence destroys it, it was sustained by noise, not truth. And truth never needs chasing. As you remain quiet, something else is happening within you. Your nervous system is learning safety without external reassurance. Your emotions are learning regulation without external validation. Your identity is detaching from how others perceive you. That is deep work. That is why it feels exhausting. That is why rest feels unfamiliar. That is why boredom feels threatening. You are not bored. You are unprogramming. And unprogramming requires stillness. Understand this clearly. You are not being punished with silence. You are being entrusted with it. Silence is given to those who can handle it. Many people cannot survive quiet because it confronts them with themselves. You are learning to sit with your thoughts without obeying them. You are learning to feel emotion without acting on it. You are learning discernment over impulse. These are the marks of someone being prepared for influence. Influence is not charisma. Influence is stability. And stability is forged here. There will come a point, sooner than you expect, where the urge to reach out simply drops. Not because you forced it down, but because it loses relevance. That is the sign you have crossed a threshold. When something no longer controls your attention, it no longer controls you. That is freedom. And freedom is the real reward of obedience. Everything else flows from that. But until then, the instruction remains. Do not reach out. Do not hint. Do not send signals. Do not ask mutuals. Do not monitor reactions. Detachment is not just physical. It is mental. Emotional. Energetic. Curiosity is still contact. Monitoring is still attachment. You are being called to full disengagement so that full clarity can arrive. Partial obedience creates partial outcomes. Full obedience creates irreversible change. You may wonder why God cares so much about this one decision. Because this decision is not isolated. It is a pattern breaker. The same discipline you apply here will apply everywhere else. The way you handle access here will determine how you handle power later. If you cannot say no to familiarity, you will not say no to compromise. If you cannot sit in discomfort now, you will escape responsibility later. God is shaping consistency, not convenience. And here is the truth many do not want to hear. Some people only respect you once they realize you are willing to lose them. Not because you threaten to leave, but because you actually do. Your silence communicated something your words never could. It said you value alignment over attachment. It said you will not negotiate your peace. It said you trust God more than outcomes. That message landed. Even if it is resisted, it landed. Do not mistake resistance for indifference. Resistance means something important is being challenged. Indifference would mean nothing mattered. What you are seeing now, even indirectly, is the consequence of your growth. Growth disrupts dynamics. Growth forces recalibration. Growth is uncomfortable for everyone involved. But it is necessary. As this continues, you may feel an urge to justify yourself internally. You do not need to. God knows your heart. God knows your intention. God knows what you endured silently before you chose silence outwardly. You did not arrive here impulsively. You arrived here after restraint failed, after communication failed, after patience was stretched thin. This was not your first response. It was your final boundary. And final boundaries are respected in time, even if resisted at first. Stay grounded. Eat. Sleep. Move your body. Stay present. Do not live in anticipation. Anticipation is another form of attachment. Live in obedience. Obedience is enough. Let days pass without checking. Let weeks pass without contact. Let space do what space does best. Heal, reveal, and reorder. I will say this again because it seals the work. Silence is not costing you anything meant for you. Silence is costing you everything that was draining you. The discomfort you feel now is the absence of chaos you were used to managing. Calm can feel strange when chaos was familiar. Give yourself time to adjust. You are learning a new baseline. Anchor yourself once more. Like this if you are still holding the line. Comment one word only that represents discipline. Subscribe, because the next instruction will address what to do when the silence is tested externally. And hear this closing seal. Remain still. Remain obedient. Remain unmoved. What you protected in silence will return with clarity, or it will be replaced with something aligned. Either outcome is victory. Stay where you are, now listen carefully. This is the closing instruction. Do not rush through it. Do not multitask. Do not half listen. What I am about to say completes the assignment. This is the final seal. You are nearing the end of this phase, and the end is always the most dangerous point. Not because you are weak, but because familiarity tries one last time to pull you back. When people sense they are losing access permanently, they make their boldest moves. That is why you must stay disciplined now more than ever. The silence you have maintained is not invisible. It has been noticed. It has been felt. And it has already done what words never could. There is something deeply unsettling to someone when they realize they no longer live in your mind. When they realize they cannot trigger you, predict you, or pull a response from you. That realization creates a loss of identity for them, because part of who they were depended on how you responded. This is why silence feels threatening to them. And this is why you must not break it. Not now. Not at the end. Understand this truth without softening it. If you speak now, after coming this far, you will not return to where you were before. You will return to something worse. Because once growth is initiated, reversal always feels heavier than the original condition. God does not recycle lessons endlessly. He intensifies them. That is why obedience at the end matters more than obedience at the beginning. Many start strong. Few finish aligned. You are not waiting for her to change. You are not waiting for an apology. You are not waiting for closure. You are waiting for internal authority to settle permanently. Authority that does not shake when tested. Authority that does not need reassurance. Authority that does not negotiate with discomfort. That authority is almost fully formed in you now. You can feel it. A steadiness you didn't have before. A clarity that doesn't argue. A calm that doesn't panic. That is the real transformation. What comes next does not require explanation. What comes next does not require defense. What comes next does not require you to tell your story. Your life will say enough. Your posture will say enough. Your peace will say enough. People will draw their own conclusions, and you will no longer feel the urge to correct them. That is when you know you are free. Let me say this plainly. If she reaches out after this, it will not be from control. It will be from curiosity, regret, or loss of certainty. And when that moment comes, you will not feel desperate. You will feel neutral. That neutrality is the sign you have crossed over. You do not respond from neutrality. You discern from it. And discernment will tell you whether access is restored differently or closed permanently. Either way, you will not lose yourself again. This silence was never about punishment. It was about alignment. It was never about proving strength. It was about building it. It was never about winning. It was about becoming unmovable. And you did that. Quietly. Without applause. Without validation. That is why this counts. Now hear this final covenant prayer, and let it close the door behind you. Father God, I thank you for the discipline you placed in this listener. I thank you for the restraint they showed when emotion demanded reaction. I thank you for the silence that protected what you were building. Seal this work now. Remove every lingering attachment. Silence every echo of the past. Anchor their identity in clarity, not memory. Guard their future from old cycles. Let their obedience speak louder than any words ever could. And establish them in peace that cannot be disturbed by access, absence, or opinion. And I leave you with this final warning, spoken once and not repeated. Do not romanticize what God removed. Do not revisit what He closed. Do not reopen what He ended. Stay silent. Stay aligned. Stay ready. What comes next will not shock you anymore. It will confirm everything.